So I think it's fair to say that the negotiations for Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua have fallen through. That seems to be the line that's coming from the teams, the people closest to both fighters. And look, I don't want to be a downer or anything, but I said in my video when Tyson Fury first called out Anthony Joshua that I doubted that the fight would happen. And yeah, I think it's fair to say I was on the money with that one. It's a shame. I wish I was wrong, but as it stands, I don't think I am. And anyway, we have to move on. And Eddie Hearn has spoken about how he's looking to get Anthony Joshua out on the 17th of December. So a little way away, but he says that it's likely going to be against a top 20 opponent. And I figured just to do a video on who that could potentially be. So I'm on BoxRec right now, and I have up the world heavyweight rankings. And obviously I'm going to go through the names and consider how realistic is it that this person fights Joshua on the 17th of December. Take it with a pinch of salt, however, because BoxRec doesn't have the most... just take their rankings with a pinch of salt, because it's based on this really weird point system. I believe it's still based on that system. And so it's not necessarily the truest ranking order. But anyway, at number one is Alexander Usyk. Unsurprisingly, he of course beat Joshua twice. He's unified heavyweight champion currently. And yeah, I think it's fair to have Alexander Usyk at the top of the tree, either him or Tyson Fury. I don't have an issue. Tyson Fury, as I'm sure you can imagine, isn't actually listed on the top 20 rankings because he is, by his account, retired. He hasn't fought since his retirement, quote unquote, so he hasn't been reinstated on the list. So number 2 is Anthony Joshua. Number 3, Deontay Wilder. Very unlikely that fight would happen because, of course, Deontay Wilder is fighting Robert Helenius in a few weeks' time. And even if he blasts out Helenius in one round, what's the likelihood that Deontay Wilder is going to fight Joshua a couple of months later in December at the Wembley Arena, which is only a 10,000 capacity venue? Unlikely. Andy Ruiz, former Anthony Joshua conqueror. Andy Ruiz just fought Luis Ortiz. When was that fight? Was that the beginning of September? Yeah, I don't think he'll be coming back out in December. That would be very unlikely. And you'd have to imagine that Andy Ruiz would want a significant amount of money. Small crowd. Yeah, can't see it happening. Dylan White. Now, this is a fight that's actually been mentioned for Anthony Joshua. I don't think it was mentioned for December, but it was mentioned for like maybe next year, 2023. If Anthony Joshua's next fight in December was taking place at a bigger venue, say at least like the O2, something like that, at least 20,000 people, then I think the Dylan White fight would be an option, like it'd be on the table. However, given that Eddie Hearn has said it's at the Wembley Arena, half that, 10,000 people, I can't see it happening. Yeah, I can't see what happening. I think that's going to be one that they do reserve for maybe like spring 2023, maybe something like that. Next one at number 6 is Joe Joyce. We know Joe Joyce just scored a massive win over Joseph Parker. Didn't seem to ship too much punishment, although he did take some big shots, and you have to imagine it was probably a fairly hard training camp because it is really the biggest fight of Joe Joyce's career. I'm sure he'd like to come back out for December, but is it likely? I don't think so. I can't see that happening. Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz, of course, back in September, whenever it was, he fought Andy Ruiz. So he's coming off of a loss that wasn't too damaging, but I suspect that he's going to want a significant sum of money because he's just... How many pay-per-views has Luis Ortiz done in a row now? Because it was Ruiz in September, Charles Martin on New Year's Day, and what was his fight before that? So yeah, you'd imagine that Luis Ortiz wants a decent sum of money. Would Team AJ, like Eddie Hearn and DAZN, be willing at this point to put Joshua in with Ortiz? after Joshua's lost to Usyk twice and has his confidence in tatters. Would they see this as a good opportunity, a good tick over fight? Because I think that's really what Anthony Joshua, or at least Team Joshua, are going to be looking. Someone who can put up some resistance so they don't just get completely blown away, but they're not dangerous enough to hand AJ another loss. So Ortiz, could that be on the table? I think out of the ones that have been like we're seventh for the list at Ortiz now. I think that's probably the most realistic one we've come across, other than Dylan White. Joseph Parker, yeah, that's certainly not going to happen. Joseph Parker's just been splattered by Joe Joyce a couple of weekends ago. That's not happening at all. Derek Chisora, another one that's probably not going to happen because we know Derek Chisora and Anthony Joshua they're pals. They never really shown much of an interest in fighting each other. And so I don't think that one's going to be very likely. Kubrat Pulev, how about him? Well, he's already been knocked out by Joshua. Funnily knocked out at Wembley Arena. Would Pulev want a rematch? I don't think he'd be very keen on that. Maybe at this point he doesn't care. He doesn't really care about winning. He just wants another Joshua payday. Who knows? But I think Team Joshua, they'd be like, we've beaten Pulev before. Let's at least move on to someone new. Get a new character in the mix. Michael Hunter at number 11. Interesting. Michael Hunter, I think that would be... I'd like that. Is it realistic? I'm not sure. I think there is... The chance of it being Michael Hunter has increased slightly, seeing as Michael Hunter's fight with Hughie Fury has fallen through because Hughie Fury, being the sickest man in all of Europe, has had to pull out again. And Michael Hunter's dangerous though, but maybe they see him as looking a bit vulnerable after he had that shaky performance against Jerry Forrest. Yeah, it's Jerry Forrest. Maybe they think this is the best time to get someone like Hunter, who's a bit of a dark horse. If that fight got made in December, AJ versus Michael Hunter, I would not grumble at all. I'd happily watch that. So, is it realistic? Michael Hunter, you have to imagine, was in camp. He's worked with Eddie Hearn before. How much money will he demand? Will Team AJ actually... Would they like to take that risk? Because I do think that is a risky fight. Anyway, number 12, Martin Bakole. I think that this fight is unlikely purely because Martin Bakole and Joshua, they've sparred a lot. I think they probably have some kind of friendship. And that's just my perspective as an outsider looking in. I think I'd be quite surprised if these two ever fought, to be honest. AJ seems to be quite friendly with a lot of his sparring partners, and I think, yeah, not that I like it, but I think that's just how it is. That's just the situation. So yeah, I think a Martin Bakole fight at any point with Joshua is kind of unlikely. Frank Sanchez at number 13. Yeah, this fight would not happen. If this fight happened on December against Joshua, in December rather, I would be very surprised because Frank Sanchez, he's up and coming. He's dangerous. And I think stylistically, Joshua, his team would want him to be in a good place before taking on someone like Frank Sanchez. So, yeah, I cannot see this fight happening at all. But once again, if it got made, I'd be more than happy with it. Frank Sanchez, I think, is an underrated fighter. And it's just a matter of time before he has a real big breakout performance. Otto Wallin. I think this is probably the most likely fight because there's history, so it sells. Anthony Joshua beat Otto Wallin in the amateurs. I think was at the 2011 World Championships. I may be wrong. I think it was around 2010, 2011 when Joshua beat Otto Wallin. And yeah, so it kind of sells. There's a bit of history. Otto Wallin gave Tyson Fury that kind of tough fight. He had the bad cut, which everyone remembers. So it sells. And I think Otto Wallin, his profile isn't so big that he'd demand a massive purse. So if there's only a 10,000 person audience, it'd probably cover the costs. And also, you have to imagine that Joshua, He's had 2 camps back to back and 2 fights back to back with a supreme southpaw talent in Alexander Usyk. Maybe he thinks he can go in against Otto Wallin and use that practice, keep that momentum going against the southpaw and get Wallin out of there. So, yeah, it'd be interesting. I certainly think that's probably one of the more likely names. And, of course, Eddie Hearn has mentioned that one before in the past couple of months. Filip Hrgović. I can't see this one happening just because Filip Hrgovic's last performance was a bit flat. So I think they're probably going to see it as, oh, his profile's not where it should be to fight Joshua. But then maybe they want to try and get that fight out of the way. Maybe they see Hrgović as someone who, once he gets momentum, he'll be most dangerous. So now is the time to get him after he's had a bit of a flat performance against Zhilei Zhang. So, yeah, I don't think this is the most likely fight, Filip Hrgović for Anthony Joshua. But you never know what might happen. Tony Yoka. Well, Tony Yoka's coming off of that beating from Martin Bakole. So I have to imagine that even if the offer was presented to Yoka, what's the likelihood that Yoka's team will allow him to take it? Maybe they see him as an investment that they need to kind of recuperate in France, where he's, I guess, somewhat of a ticket seller. And that Martin Bakole fight really was a shellacking. Where's his confidence going to be? Maybe he'd just be like, you know what, it's a lot of money. AJ's not a champion, but at least I'm going to get a few, couple £1 million maybe. But would Tony Yoka's people cash him out like that? I don't know. I think it's doubtful. Daniel Dubois. Yeah, Daniel Dubois. I don't see this fight happening. I think Team Dubois, would they prefer to go for a Dylan White fight before they go for an AJ fight? I'm not sure. And what's the likelihood of Frank Warren allowing one of his fighters in Daniel Dubois to fight Joshua after the Tyson Fury negotiations have just fallen through? Maybe Frank Warren wouldn't care and he'd just be like, oh, it's going to be a payday regardless. Just get any one of my fighters to fight Joshua. Get that money. Yeah. Daniel Dubois, I think maybe it's a bit too early in his career, but yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Dubois obviously has that WBA regular belt. Are they going to try and milk it for what it's worth? Maybe they'd come to the table thinking they're the A side. That would be a laugh, wouldn't it? But yeah, Daniel Dubois, I'm not sure about that one. Arslanbek Mahmudov. He's just coming off a fight against Carlos Takam. Didn't look great. Didn't look great at all. Maybe another one that Team AJ would look to get early before he gets any kind of momentum. But then again, his profile is minimal in the UK. I don't think anyone outside the hardcore boxing fraternity in the UK knows who Makhmudov is. So is that going to be a hard sell? I think so. At number 19, we have Ali Eren Demirezin. I don't actually know who that is. I've seen the name, but I've never seen him fight. If we look at his record, last fight was in July against Adam Kovnaski, won on a 10-round UD. Before that was May, fought Kevin Johnson to an 8-round UD. Before that, he stopped Gerald Washington in 8. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be this guy. Yeah, the profile just isn't there, I don't think. Maybe it could be. Gosh, that would be dire. I don't think it will be, though. Robert Helenius at number 20. He, of course, is tied up against Deontay Wilder. Could you imagine if Robert Helenius sparked out Wilder and then was like, okay, yeah, I'll fight AJ. Fights two of the best heavyweights in the same year, months apart. I don't see that happening, though. I think Wilder will smoke Helenius' boots. Probably be the end of Helenius at this point. He's 38. And, yeah, I can't see him taking the Joshua fight. I just don't think it's really logistically possible. Murat Gassiev at number 21. Gassiev just hardly fights. How long did it take him to make his heavyweight debut? It took him a long time, like, was it 2 years or something? And he just hardly fights these days. So I don't think it's going to be him purely by virtue of the fact that Murat Gassiev just doesn't fight hardly ever. And then 22, Zhilei Zhang, who I think alongside Zhilei Zhang, Otto Wallin, and Dylan White. I think those are the three most likely names for December. As I said, I think Dylan White's most likely going to come in early 2023, but Zhilei Zhang and Otto Wallin, I think those two, purely because they have some kind of connection to Joshua. And they, of course, they are the names that have been mentioned most frequently since this Anthony Joshua December fight has been announced. I think, as I say, Otto Wallin has the amateur history. His fight with Tyson Fury is a bit of a selling point. And, of course, he was supposed to fight Dylan White in October 2021, I think it was. And so he's relative, like kind of known to the UK public. Zhilei Zhang is less so, but at least he fought on the last Anthony Joshua undercard. Many people actually thought he beat Filip Hrgović as well. I can't really remember the fight that clearly, but I definitely remember it being a close fight. Once again, Zhang is a southpaw, so maybe Joshua wants to keep that practice going of fighting southpaws, using the momentum he got from the training camps and the fights against Usyk to maybe consolidate some performances against the southpaw. So I think it's definitely going to be between Zhang and Wallin. And if I have to pick between the two, I think it's Otto Wallin. I think come December 17, assuming that that date actually does go ahead, I think it'll be Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin. Not the greatest fight, but it's the one we have. And just a guess, though. It's just a guess. I'm just predicting, I'm estimating and seeing the lay of the land. So I do hope we get like a Dylan White, or even better, a Michael Hunter or Frank Sanchez. Could you imagine? Frank Sanchez or Michael Hunter against Joshua in December. That would be... I wouldn't be too confident for Joshua. I say that. This point where he's in mentally, those guys, both of them are dangerous, especially Frank Sanchez. I think Michael Hunter can be a bit flat, whereas Sanchez, he's very much on the up, despite the fact that he's clearly not 30 years old. But that's a different story for a different video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Who do you think that Anthony Joshua is going to fight on December 17th? If he's actually going to fight at all. Maybe they just see it through till spring and then he fights Dylan White or someone. But that's all from me for this one. Leave it down below and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll catch you in the next video.